Trustees to order. I'll call up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the
United States
United
of
States of
America,
America,
and
to
to the republic
which
for
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
for all.
Okay, will Secretary Treasurer Horowitz please call the roll?
President Eric Schultz,
Here.
Secretary Treasurer Horowitz, I am obviously here. Edward J. Warner Jr.,
Present.
Trustee William Pell IV,
Present.
Trustee Ann Welker.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Fantastic. Okay. Ann Welker, I believe, has Bill Jacobs coming on for Phragmites removal discussion.
Yes, Charles, if we could let Mr. Jacobs on or in, that would be great.
Is
This is
that
LISMA.
Prism? Okay,
Yes, Prism.
I don't know which. He's got three.
Bill Jacobs represents the Long Island Invasive Species Management Association, and he is going to speak about the possibility of Phragmites removal in Long Pond, in the Long Pond Greenbelt. Bill, can you turn on your video?
You actually picked Abby. I also work with LISMA, but Bill is doing the presentation. Hello, everybody. There should be another one.
I'll let the other two in.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Charles. Sorry.
Yeah.
Welcome, Abby.
Thank you.
Thank you. There I am. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, you can put your video on. Let's see.
Can everyone see that?
Yes.
All right, good. Good morning. I'm Bill Jacobs, Program Manager for the Long Island Invasive Species Management Area, also known as LISMA. Thank you for inviting us to speak about the issue of Phragmites at Long Pond. I would like to introduce our team. There's myself as a Program Manager, Abby Besretzik, and Haley Gladich. I was involved at Long Pond when I was with the Nature Conservancy from 1997 to 2006. And I was involved with Bruce Horowitz and Dr. Marilyn Jordan on some of the early Phragmites control that went on at Long Pond. Just quickly, LISMA is a voluntary association of land managers and landowners working together to prevent the spread of invasive species. We are funded by the New York State Environmental Protection Fund under contract with DEC. We have 6 invasive species management complexes, we call them. These are priority conservation areas. These are the higher quality areas on Long Island that LISMA works to protect. You can see that Long Pond Greenbelt is one of our 6 priority areas. Long Pond has an amazing diversity. It's one of the most biologically diverse sites in New York State. There's about 15 rare or threatened species at Long Pond, including the first one on this list, the Ludwigia, which is critically threatened in New York State. That's this one. It's listed as state threatened, critically imperiled in New York. And the Long Pond population is described as the best in New York by the New York State Natural Heritage Program. This critically imperiled plant is directly in the path of Phragmites. Also, in addition to threatening the rare plants there at the pond, the Phragmites is again beginning to block Ligony Brook. Just to bring you up to speed, pest management efforts occurred from about 1999 to 2007. I was around for most of that. There was applications of herbicide on several stands. Some stands were cut. Other stands were mowed and hand dug. I remember Gene Held did some of the hand digging in the northwest corner there. We went back to the pond just last week and other times before that And most areas have Phragmites coming back, except for the glyphosate treated stand number 2 on the west side there. So this was stand 2. I thought it was interesting to show you this because now we're looking at it 16 years later. Stand 2 looked like the image at the top. Well, that was, you can see the person there. I know it's probably pretty small, but there's a little tiny person there that shows you some scale as to how large that stand of Phragmites was. It was treated in, let's see, 2002, 2003, and 2004. So that's, again, that's on the west side of the pond. Abby and I went back there last week, and we're happy to report that 16 years later, there's no Phragmites anywhere along that shoreline. And the native plants have come back very nicely. It looks great.
Mhm.
We also checked Ligony Brook, and you can see that first rectangle there is where Ligony Brook is. You can see Phragmites has come back there. A little to the right, there's a large stand of frag, and then there are several other stands further east. A couple of the stands look new. I don't remember them being there years ago, and they're not identified by a number. Here's I found on the left, I found a photo of Ligony Brook. I found it online, and I don't know the date of it, but you can see the weir and how open it was at one time. And then on the right, this is looking north at that weir. The weir is buried under Phragmites and multiflora rose. It's hard to even get to it. And here's another shot looking in the same direction. So this is looking south at the weir. This is the old photo that I found. And then on the right, this is what that looks like now. There's still water flowing through there, but and fish can probably still pass through, but it's close. It's hard to say. The Phragmites is pretty thick. When we were out there last year, we went out with Laura Smith and Juliana Quant from the town of Southampton, who do great work, by the way, on invasive species, and also Bruce Horwath. We went out last year and we found a stand of Phragmites in the center of the pond, towards the north end, that I'd never noticed before. And there's approximately 150 to 200 stems of Phragmites growing together with native plants, the white water lily, pickerel weed, and those critically imperiled Ludwigia is also growing right with this Phragmites. That's what it looks like. You can see in the center up farther there is the Ligony Brook.
Mhm.
And what we're proposing to do is, because the Phragmites is in the water, and when the water level is still high, we're proposing to cut it manually below the water line. And this has been shown to drown the plant by cutting off its oxygen supply. I've done this successfully in the past with Phragmites and also purple loosestrife, as long as you can keep it submerged for, well, a couple of weeks probably. It's hard to know for sure. We can simply cut that Phragmites in the center and probably eradicate that stand. It might have to happen, we might have to repeat it 2 or 3 years to make sure we get it. But I think we can get that center stand before it gets established. Once that Phragmites in the center gets established, it will start to accumulate organic matter, and it will start to raise up the bottom of the pond. It will elevate it up until it becomes an island of Phragmites right in the center of the pond.
Mhm.
And I think we can get that manually very easily. There's no guarantees though, but we try, and it usually works. So we're proposing to control the stand of Phragmites in the center manually with hand clippers or lappers. And we're seeking permission from the town trustees, New York State DC. LISMA has a general permit that we can use for wetland work. We still need to give them a map and a plan and get permission. Also, we're working on surveying for aquatic invasive species. These are other invasives that might be in the pond using a rake toss method. So we want to go out there this summer and do some transects up and down the pond and see if we can find any aquatic invasives. Hopefully we won't find many. At some point, trustees may want to consider managing Phragmites blocking Ligony Brook to maintain or restore that fish passage. And then looking long-term, planning for the future management of Phragmites at the pond. We do have a successful control method that 16 years later is still free of Phragmites. The other stands that were cut or dug have all returned. It's only the one stand, number 2, that hasn't come back. So thank you very much. That's all I have. I can answer any questions you might have.
Okay. I think the most important part down there is to keep that fish passage open. So any help you can give us on that would be very helpful. I mean, we've enhanced that fish passage, to get the airwives up. So it would be kind of tragic if we didn't allow them to get that last couple of feet into the pond.
Yeah.
So maybe our marine maintenance staff can help under your guidance, maybe to get that cleared out.
That's okay. That's possible. We can guide that project, and it's tricky to dig around by all the native plants and rare plants, but if it's focused right on the channel of the brook, that should be okay.
Would it be better to dig them out, or maybe take a weed whacker and just go walk up the channel with a pair of boots and cut them right in the channel and take away the cut Phragmites? Yeah,
I think anything that minimizes soil disturbance is probably better.
Okay.
So you could try cutting it. It wouldn't eliminate the plant. It will grow back. So it would be
a maintenance.
Maintenance, permanent cutting. Same thing with the brook. There's water in it now. It's very low, and I'm sure it gets lower. But the Phragmites that's right in the brook, if the water level is high enough, it might help to drown it. But, but as a maintenance thing, that would probably be helpful.
Yeah, because our maintenance guys have done a couple projects down there, along with Dayton, moving some of the old bridge that was in the way and the culvert that had collapsed. So we've maintained that, waterway so the alewives can swim up there. But unless the pond is high and we've had a lot of precipitation, it's very difficult for them to get there. So alleviating this little stand of Phragmites would even help more.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we also have to get to that weir also, so that if we do get not too much rainfall in the winter, that we can put a board across it or something, keep the pond level up, so that when the airwives do come through, we can let that water out and give them a channel to get through. Because for many years it was pretty dry in there. But I remember when Held first came in, and that was a great project years ago about that wicking. Worked good.
Yeah, thank you. It did work very well. It's amazing. Really is amazing. The weir, I'm not an expert on weirs and water levels and things. Currently, the brook is winding itself around the weir, around the west side of it.
Oh, okay.
Through the Phragmites.
You can't really tell, that's the problem.
Then it looks like, to get it to actually use the weir.
Oh, okay. You can't really tell because of all that growth there. When we were down.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. So it might require a trip and some planning with someone, an engineer that might know how to repair that weir. I can do the Phragmites part, but not the weir part.
When did you anticipate starting?
Well, we would like to cut in the center of the pond before the water level gets too low. It
Mhm.
has to be drowned for a period of time. And that area might even be just dry at some point in the summer. So as soon as we can get out there, as soon as we get permission from DEC, that would take a few weeks. And as soon as we can get out there when there's water, which could be this year, if any reason there's a delay, we can also do it next year. That would be fine. We'd like to try it this year.
Okay, so in the past, refresh my memory as far as what you needed is you just need a letter of permission from us.
Yes, I think that's it. I don't
Okay.
recall what kind of a permit it was, but a letter of permission, and I'm sure that will help with the DEC permission also.
Would the
Sure.
letter of permission also include the invasive species that you look to, like possibly rake and see if there's any other invasive species within the pond to include both the
I
Phragmites and
think
that
for
both?
this, well, yeah, you could put that in the letter. We don't need a DEC permit for that kind of work, but it's something the trustees might want to give permission for.
Oh, we
That
can
would be
just look at
helpful.
Phragmites and any other invasive species.
Yeah, we're
So-
going to survey for the aquatic invasives. And we did a few surveys, a few rake tosses when we were out there. We didn't find anything, but
Good.
more.
You don't
So,
have knotweed in there yet, do you?
no, we didn't see any knotweed.
Okay, good.
Thank goodness. No. That's all we need.
Well, see, there was opined that the reason why the Phragmites got started in there was the grassing of duck blinds using Phragmites. So that's why we put that in our regulations that you can't use common reed and Phragmites to grass blinds in freshwater ponds.
Yes, that's a good regulation. And I've seen that at coastal plain ponds throughout the Pine Barrens and South Shore.
Mhm.
All seems to be brought in from the duck blinds.
Not anymore.
No, that's good.
No.
Bill and Abby and Haley, thanks so much for taking a trip out here and for your management and stewardship of Long Pond Greenbelt coastal ponds. Question about the use of the wicking and the herbicide. I'm a little bit hesitant because, as you're saying, it was successful, but just the thought of using a herbicide in with all these protected species sends a little bit of a warning flag out for me. So can you just speak to that, please?
Sure, yeah. No, that's certainly understandable. And there's always a risk using herbicide of impacting non-target organisms. There's always a risk. The risk is low. The risk of harm to the native communities is lower than the risk of Phragmites is. The risk of destruction by Phragmites is pretty high, probably nearly 100% in the area that it's infesting. So it's comparing the risks between Phragmites and herbicide. The herbicide is wiped on with a wand applicator. It's a PVC pipe with holes in it, and it's wrapped with thick, heavy like towels, like white hotel towels, and they can actually go over the native plants because Phragmites is taller. So they just wipe along the top of the Phragmites, and there can be native plants right under it that aren't impacted for the most part.
Right.
As far as digging goes, that's more destructive because the water levels and ground level is critically important at the pond. That's why those rare species are there. Seasonally fluctuating water levels and annually fluctuating water levels maintain that rare community. So I would avoid digging or pulling, things like that. Cutting is a possibility, but we saw that it doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Well,
so
this
yeah,
was
there's a risk,
was
Ian, but it's
very,
a lower risk than doing nothing, I think.
this was a very controversial topic when we discussed this initially with Ms. Held, and there was a few people that were very concerned about that also. But to differentiate between the two types of herbicides is between contact and ground soaking. That the glyphosate is a contact. It only kills what it contacts, and then theoretically it becomes inactive in the soil. But it's probably the least has the least effect on the environment than the traditional other types of herbicide, being that it's a contact. So the wicking was found to be the best option.
Yeah, I agree. It's the least adverse impact on the environment if it's applied according to labels and applied by the applicators that know what they're doing, that are carefully supervised. We worked with a company called Allied Biological, and I've worked with them for years. They were out of New Jersey. They're now owned by Solitude, which is a lake management company. And their entire business is managing lakes and ponds and invasive species. So I would work with someone who is knowledgeable and experienced in this, rather than a general landscape pesticide applicator. So there's a company that did the original work that could be called upon again if you so chose to.
And the comparison of cutting versus the wiping or the herbicide, the cutting requires much more annual maintenance.
Yes. I think cutting by the brook is a good idea. The cutting requires more annual maintenance, and it also involves some amount of trampling. So you probably don't want to do it too much. I think by the brook is okay, but other areas where there might be rare plants, walking around in there a lot and impacting the soil and kind of trampling things with repeated cutting may not be the best idea. But I think in some cases, cutting is good. Depends on where you are. If you're in a pond or a lake with residential houses around and no endangered species or threatened species, cutting can work, repeated cutting. It's a little tricky at this site.
Because we've seen good success. Oops.
Go ahead.
We've seen good success on Mecox and on Sag with cutting.
Yeah, I agree.
With repeated.
Yeah, repeated cutting can be effective.
Okay, great. May I just swing away only because I'd asked you if you had a chance to take a look at Trout Pond?
Yes.
And at Big Fresh, because we had gotten calls about invasives at both of those with Kabamba at Trout Pond, and specifically with water lilies at Big Fresh.
Yeah, we Abby and I looked at Trout Pond and Big Fresh. Trout Pond has a lot of Kabamba, certainly. It was easier to see than Big Fresh. It was hard to get down there, and the pond is so big, hence the name. We couldn't get an assessment of all the Kabamba or whatever else, but we got a better look at Trout Pond. And it's full of Kabamba, which is native to the southeast United States, but it's moving up. Couple quick recommendations. On Long Island, our invasive plants and even our native plants can be fed by fertilizers in groundwater or runoff or road runoff. So the houses around the ponds, it would be good. And maybe they are, I'm not sure, but if their septic tanks were cleaned and updated so that nutrients aren't getting into the ponds. That's number one. The Kabamba, there's a lot of it in there. It would be hard to eradicate it. You could probably suppress it somewhat in Trout Pond.
Yeah.
By manually, by hand pulling or a harvester or something. It would be hard to eradicate it completely once it's that well established.
Well, with Trout Pond, you have to talk to the Parks and Recreation because we don't own Trout Pond, the trustees.
And there's some Phragmites around, let's see. Oh, no, there was no Phragmites at that one, was there? There was Phragmites we saw around Big Fresh.
Most likely, probably because of the residual duct blind.
Yeah, yeah. That would be a site for cutting, maybe to try repeated cutting.
Wasn't there some Phragmites right at the very end of the?
Oh, there was a trout pond. Yeah, yeah.
Drain?
A trout.
No, at Big Fresh.
We looked from the road. It was hard to see Big Fresh, but we did see some stands of Phragmites. I don't recall exactly where they were.
We saw some near some houses and properties. So that might have been one concern, is that a property owner reported it.
Yeah, repeated
Oh.
cutting would work there. And then back to the Kabamba, that's a difficult one. I would, again, the nutrients, if there are any, from the road there too. And surveying all the town's ponds, the most important or the priority ponds, to make sure that Kabamba or other aquatic invasives, because there's other ones coming down the pike, aren't getting into the ponds, and try to getting them before they become established.
Mhm.
So I don't have great news about Kabamba. You probably don't want to use herbicide in there, and I wouldn't recommend it.
Mhm.
Some municipalities use harvesters, suction harvesters. Again, the suction harvester is expensive, and it's maintenance. It's cosmetic maintenance to make it look better for a while. If the pond looks ugly because it's just swamped with invasive plants, the harvester will give you some relief for a couple of weeks.
The
Okay.
thing with Big Fresh is we have that large run of Alewives that go in there. So, you got to take that into consideration too, because they're in there from basically April all the way until the fall when the juveniles start to leave. So, you
Right.
have to be very careful with any kind of harvester, with the suspension of nutrients, the suspension of sedimentation with a filtering fish like an alewive, because they might actually get smothered and die in there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Those definitely have to look at things like that, and maybe harvesting is not a good option when you have alewife.
Mhm. Okay.
No easy
All right.
answers. Sorry.
No.
That's-
Thank you so much for your time and your
Oh, thank you.
interest. We really
Yep.
appreciate. Does anyone else have any questions?
No, thanks very much. We'll work on getting you a letter of permission, and if you could guide our maintenance department a little bit and get in touch with them and come up with some sort of a plan to keep that alewife cut
Yeah,
open.
sounds good.
Long Pond would be great.
Yeah, we can do that. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you for the presentation.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the
Thank you,
presentation.
Haley, Abby, and Bill.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is the purchase of large scanners for the trustee's office to preserve and digitize documents. Who's handling that?
Yes, I would like to give the floor to Jessica Feldman.
Okay,
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
good.
Good, Jessica.
Good, thanks, Jess.
We've purchased two of these prior, I believe one in 2018 and one in 2020. The goal is to get most of the computers in the office. We have 8 computers in the office. These large scanners so we can digitize documents. Specifically, we scan in 11 by 17 documents all the time. And it would just really help if we could purchase 2 more. And I have a quote here. It is $6,191. They are expensive. That's for both scanners. They are expensive, but the ones that we have work really, really great. They're super fast. They're super efficient. They scan double-sided. They scan in color. So I think it would really help us here in the office. So I don't know. I think Scott said that we had money
There's money available. We kind of planned for these things. I mean, time is money, and the modernization and efficiency of that office is very important. It processes a lot of paperwork, and I think they need to do that in the most professional manner. And this kind of helps give them some more of the tools that they need to be able to serve the public as efficiently and effectively as possible. So,
Yep.
need it.
Sounds good.
So the scanners help with the digitalization of the office, correct?
Yes.
So which allows more public access, less FOIL requests and less staff time administering those FOIL requests. So I think it's a good process that we're coming up to speed, catching up to the rest of the world as far as our office and the way we run it. So I would be in favor of it.
There's a resolution on for general session, right?
Okay. Very
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
You're
Jess.
welcome, Jess. Thanks, Jess.
licenses for the stickers, that's included too, right?
Yeah, this I just kind of want, I know it's very early. I know it's only June of 2021. And we don't normally discuss this until later on in the fall. But because you guys have changed the stickers, just really quickly. So this is the 4x4, black and white. This is the dock slip, black and white. Kayak racks, black and white. This has always been, this is the Trustee Roads, it's always been white with blue ink.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what, if you guys want to change that to black and white. This is what I really wanted to discuss, the Lake Agawam, because we need to do more ink and stickers probably towards the end of the summer. And I just wanted to get ahead of the game here and know, you know, if we want to like bulk up on certain things. I just wanted to know if you guys wanted to continue with, in the past, we have done whatever the color is for the 4x4 stickers, which was supposed to be orange. We've done that for the ink for the Lake Agawam. So I just wanted to know if you guys wanted to move these to black and white, or if you wanted to continue with that trend that we used to do, just so I know for ordering purposes, it would be helpful.
I would think we should standardize it, so we're not buying all kinds of different colors of ink and everything. How does everybody feel about that?
I think that was the general direction that we were trying to go.
Yes,
Right.
once we got all the stickers that we needed for each one of the, you know, things that we sell as far as parking and kayaks. So if we standardize it every year, it would be more efficient and it would be cost savings.
Yeah, because then they just were changing the templates. So, you
Right,
know, it wasn't so much the colors, it was the templates that it was able to set up for us. Just made it a lot easier to buy things in bulk.
right. I'm in favor of it.
Does
Yeah,
it make any difference for enforcement with the color?
They'll just have to get out of their cars to enforce it, to see.
The dates.
I mean, we had that discussion when we switched over the other ones. It was just, you know, the dates were bigger so that they could see it. And there
Yeah,
hasn't
we could
been,
make the date bigger on this. I do
Yeah.
believe that the village TCOs enforce the Lake Agawam parking permits. So I don't know if
Yes.
one of you guys wants to have a discussion with them. Obviously, this won't go
I'll-
into effect until
th-
next year. But
they're
Hey,
walking
Jeff.
right by the cars and looking at it. They can physically look at it and see what's going on. I think it's
Yeah,
more than
they're
just
on
color.
foot.
Right, you know? Yeah,
I can talk to the village office. I think black and whites is a good idea to go to. And I also think that we might want to look to make that a 3-year option, a 3-year permit.
yeah,
that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the next one, but I think we should
Right.
keep that in mind too, Scott. Try to make that a 3-year.
and then the Trustee Roads, this has always been blue ink on white sticker. Is that something that you guys would also like to standardize? Or,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't issue too many of these, so.
I
I think
would.
it's easier to standardize it all and make it up in the templates that come out of IT. It clearly defines
Yes.
what it is, clearly defines expiration year.
Yep.
It's easily enforceable.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just makes it easier on the office, the tax savings to the taxpayer,
Right,
better efficiency.
Streamlines the process.
Absolutely.
no problem.
Thank you, guys. Much
I think,
appreciated.
Okay, very good. Is that it, Jessica? Do you have
That's
anything
all
else?
for that. Yes, thank you.
Okay, okay, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move into general permit applications for determination. The first one is Scott with Hampton Point Association right of way. That's in East Quogue.
Yeah, so this is about, they have these seasonal docks that they install there. And with sea level rise there, this one in particular is underwater many times. So they're looking to upgrade it, change it, and raise the elevation is what they're telling me now. This application is not stating it. I know that elevation is a consideration that the board looks at very carefully. So, I think we need to clarify that. It definitely needs to come up. There's not a question. I think that the board needs to set an elevation standard that they're happy with, that's consistent with what we do. But right now, it's too low.
Here. What are you doing?
Okay.
Oh, okay, you don't need it. Yeah, I'll say, so you're gonna get out of here because you don't need this at all. So. then you have to look here.
You guys want me to show anything?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, did they indicate any elevation on there, James?
All they indicated was to replace the pilings.
Mhm.
Or it's
Yeah, I had a conversation with their representative and I spoke to other people down there and that's what the issue is. They gotta put some new material in there. They got to get it higher out of the water so they're not underwater on a regular basis.
There you go.
So I don't have an issue with it. I think they have to do it. It's necessary to do it. You want to do it the right way. And you want the board to be able to make sure that view sheds are considered and that, our standard consistent practices in terms of elevation on these things is adhered to. And
Right.
I think the board needs to,
So the DEC would standardize an 18-inch elevation change. Is this something that we should entertain looking at this particular
Well-
project and allowing them to do it?
Well, wait a second. You're talking about
for a dock, not a bulkhead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know
it's
a
it's a
dock,
dock.
yes,
Yeah. And it's
but it's underwater.
they're in and out, they take them in and out, they get in new material.
Okay.
At first they were talking about big green hearts and I was like, wait a second, are you guys going to a permanent dock now? Because now
Well,
it's
yeah.
a different ballgame, but that's not what they're doing when the application comes in. And then when I go down there and I start talking to people and take a look, it's about just getting this dock so that it's not underwater. So they need to go with longer material.
Okay.
But as you can see, they're not going to,
There you go.
they're not changing it to 10-inch green
Right,
hearts. They're
right.
going to stay with the type of material. They're just going to go to longer piles so that they can.
Yeah,
be-
because it's a seasonal dock.
Correct. They can be higher out of the water. So I'm fine with it.
Well, as long as they follow the Blue Book regulations, if the water level rises, then obviously then the dock rises there. This is that specification of how much above water you have to have the bottom stringer.
Right.
So as long as they stay consistent with that, that's fine.
I think it's fine.
Yeah, I think
So-
their regulations 2.5 feet over the water, I believe,
Yeah.
the height.
It's fine. So you're going to see new material going in there.
So the pilings that the dock are on are going to be raised up too, so the boats don't ride up on top of them during a storm, right?
Yeah, as you can see, they're changing. They're going to 22 new ones, another 11 new ones. So yeah, they're tweaking their whole scenario down there so that it works a lot better for them. They don't
James,
have
do you-
any issues.
Sorry, Scott. James, do you have a photo of this site again, please?
It's a community dock for the Hampton Point.
I think this is in the winter time, so they're not in there.
Got it. Okay.
You can see how short the pilings are. So if you got boats on a storm, they're going to ride right up on those pilings. Need to be lifted up.
Right, which is why
quite a bit, Scott.
they're buying all new stuff.
Yeah.
They hired Wilson Garcia to change it around for them. So
I
they
mean,
just
you don't want them 20 feet in the air, 10 feet in the air, but you want them probably 4 feet above, 3
Right.
feet above what that is there.
right,
You
which
can
is
see where the low, high tide mark on this bulkhead.
Yes. Here, it looks
Right.
like it's about
You-
2 feet down.
right. So it's got to be configured. There's going to be, change, and this way they're doing it above board the right way. It'll be a much better facility. They're using the proper material. Fine.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, James.
Hands up. You got one, Ann.
Matt, if you're here, this project is 132 Mill Pond Lane in Watermill. The owner proposes to construct a new docking facility consisting of an fixed elevated catwalk supported by timber pilings, open grate decking, and a seasonal swim platform at 8x8. All materials non-treated and all hardware hot dipped. If Matt Ivins is here from Suffolk Environmental.
I'm here.
Oh, great. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Ann, how you doing?
Good, thank you. If you want to talk to this a bit, Matt, that would be fantastic.
Sure. This is a proposal for a dock that pretty much reflects what's over there on Mill Pond. Like Ann said, it's a fixed elevated catwalk. It'll use open grate decking. We also request a seasonal swim platform off the seaward side, as you guys can see in the drawing. And again, this is just basically what we saw out there that has been approved and that's existing along the shoreline. That's really about it. I mean, it's not much of a dock, but I'm here to answer questions.
So my concern is the seasonal swim platform. As we know, Mill Pond is highly impacted by harmful algal blooms. In fact, there's already been the first one this season. So I don't believe there are any other swim platforms. There are floating docks which are attached to the elevated catwalk. So my suggestion would either to be, and I'm open to other suggestions, but either to bring this swim platform in and create a floating dock, or to put language in this permit that protects the trustees from anyone who would try and swim out to that platform, so that we notify, so that we're protected in the case of the harmful algal blooms presence, because frequently Mill Pond is months, weeks at a time with harmful algal blooms.
How do you want me to put that language? I'll talk to the client, but
I don't know.
in terms of whether or not we move that platform to the end of the dock, or but that's the question. Like, how do you want that language exactly?
Just might not have enough depth, but wasn't James, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there something prohibiting swim platforms in the first place in those ponds?
No, I think it says in the freshwater section that you can have an 8x8 swim platform.
Yeah.
Right here.
Sean.
Yeah, but it should be at their own discretion if they're going to go swimming. I mean, I don't think we should put any limitations as far as our permit, because then we're going to, possibly incur liability. We put a warning out with Suffolk County and, the health department that there's a algal bloom in there, and, take precaution not to swim in there. As far as giving a permit with that in it, that's kind of a gray area, I think.
I would think
language is not necessarily going to help you. Language does not eliminate liability. Maybe posting a sign on premise, something to that effect, could help, but putting language in the permit is not going to really make a difference.
That's private property, so how would we post something like that on private property.
You can't protect everybody from themselves.
Right.
You know?
Well, where's the negligence, right? Where the trustees negligent if there's something that occurs?
And to answer Trustee Warner's property, anybody can apply for a sign permit within the town. It is a permit the building department offers if they wanted to post some kind of sign. That's certainly well within their right to post on private property with a permit.
So we do post signage at Mill Pond at the public access points when there are harmful algal blooms. The trustees maintenance staff does do that. But my concern is at these residential properties where people may not know or may not pay attention to this. That's why I'm asking if perhaps we could just dial this swim platform back in and create a dock.
Might not have enough depth, right?
Well,
The-
yeah, I talked to the DEC about the platform, and to be honest, they really didn't care. It was amazing. They didn't even care if it was on the plans or not. You know, so it might be of a small size where they just don't care. I mean, their hands are full anyway, but let me talk to the client about if you guys are okay with that, relocating the platform to the seaward end of that catwalk.
The property next door has a dock, just to the west has a dock,
Yeah.
and so do several other properties.
Mm-hmm.
I just think a swim platform will be problematic, especially if we can't do anything to with the language of it to protect the trustees. And Eric, to your point, it will be the end of the catwalk is at 1.9. So if it could be chalked, Matt, that would address the water difference, the water height difference.
I might need another set of pilings though to do that. I have 2 on the landward side of the platform, so I might have to put a second set on the seaward side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we wouldn't need to chalk it because there shouldn't be any submerged aquatic vegetation like eelgrass, which we'd be chalking on a marine area. This is a freshwater pond, so it would be different, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, again, you're gonna probably have just kayaks over here. There's no motorboats, so I guess there's not gonna be any prop dredging.
Yeah, I think you should bring it and attach it to the dock.
Okay. Yeah, let me talk to the client.
How many feet past the dock is the swim platform?
Let me see. Hold on. That's probably about 10 to 12 foot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, usually the swim platform is out, you know, way farther out that you swim to. Right. This is basically an access, a lower access point, correct?
Basically.
Your regulations are kind of all over the place for management of freshwater ponds or freshwater bodies. They say that only fixed docks will be allowed in freshwater ponds, but then it says permitted swim floats shall not exceed 8 feet by 8 feet and are seasonal in nature. And then it also says lower down, it says widths of docks, fixed and swim floats, floating swim floats, maximum 6 feet in width. So there's kind of some inconsistencies with it, but it seems like the only way you can get a float would be a swim float. And would you consider a swim float out farther than attached to a catwalk or a fixed dock?
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
The trouble is when you bring the float back to the dock like that, they're going to end up putting an umbrella on it and 2 reclined chairs on it like the other people do.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think years ago, because I had a permit, wanted to do the same thing. I think Fred brought that out and it was denied.
Right.
Do you guys want me to just call this a proposed seasonal float? Would that help in any way?
Are they going to put anything on this? Obviously, it's just going to swim to it. I mean, they're not going to put like kayak.
I mean, Yeah, I mean, he hasn't really told me exactly what he wants to do with it, but I guess the idea would to be go out, to go out on it and just, I guess, I don't know, sit or lay on it, or I'm not sure what they want to do with it. But
Well, maybe you should tell them some of the pitfalls of that too, because once those Canadian geese find that, they're going to sit on there, and he's going to be right, Bill. Isn't
Yeah,
that
but they have to call Hank to do the job.
that's going to be an attractive place for them to rest and leave a little present behind each time they do.
Mhm.
So, you're going to get up on that swim float. You got to check out the other floats in the area and see how successful it's going to be. you
Yeah.
know?
Much more concerning, though, is the presence of harmful algal blooms. Mill Pond is second only in the town of Southampton to Lake Agawam as far as the degree of microcystins presence.
Right, but they can swim off the dock too.
Yeah.
Or they can swim off the shore.
Not
Stopping them.
not with harmful algal blooms present.
But they can, but just by the virtue of that having a swim float out there doesn't mean that if we didn't allow that, if they wanted to go swimming, they'd still go
Oh,
swimming.
I see.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're
We can't-
basically saying an attractive nuisance type of thing.
Exactly. We can't babysit everybody.
Right. Yeah. Matt, why don't you find out what the true use of this thing's going to be, and then maybe we can come to some conclusion of what we can give the person.
Well, like but in use, I mean, he's just going to say to me recreational. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, that's it. It's just going to swim out to it.
That's what he explained to me. Yeah.
It's only 20 feet off the
I mean-
dock. Usually a swim float is like, a couple of 100 feet that you
I-
swim to.
Yeah, no, I know, but and this is going back a bit, but I probably told him, I said, no, you can't go that far in Mill Pond. We can't have it sitting in the middle of the pond.
But
So yeah.
Matt, just a question, since you're kind of counseling, to what Ann's talking about. Did you have a conversation with your client about the harmful algal blooms? Like, hey, you know what? It sounds like a great idea in a perfect world, but the reality is you may end up not feeling good when you get done taking your swim.
Not really, because what's to prevent him, even if he didn't have a float out, a swim platform, from diving in? I mean, if he's going to go kayaking, he's going to be in contact with this stuff just as much.
Well,
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like,
well, yes and no. I mean, if it gets aerosolized while you're kayaking through, but I mean, when you're immersing your body into this stuff, look, I'm just saying, people come to me all the time with, hey, I want to do this and that. And I say, all right, it sounds great in theory, but think about this for a second. And then they go, okay, second thought.
yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Cause I'm not speaking to these folks. You're speaking to them. And
No, I get it. I mean, it's a concern, but again, it's like you said, we can't babysit these
we
people.
can't
They're
babysit
adults.
everybody, but
Yeah.
But we can educate them.
well, that's what I'm just saying. Educate them. I mean, I get it. Consistency to the blue book. If it fits, then they should be able to get it. If it fits the blue book, they should be able to get what they're applying for. But I would just educate them to the fact that you got your float. It fits with the blue book. However, you may want to reconsider the activity based on harmful algal blooms and potential, have the conversation. That's all. If it fits, they should have it, but they need to be careful.
You know what? Maybe
use
do you? All
common
right.
sense.
How about do you want me to? I'll reach out to the client. I'll explain, the situation with the algal blooms in Mill Pond, and then ask him. I can have him respond maybe in writing. So maybe that you guys have that in your file.
Okay, but just tell them. Do you realize that you probably won't want to use this thing a good portion of the year? Is it wise to even spend the money to put it in the first place? Or if he's going to do kayaks, move it back, attach it to the other thing, and store the kayaks on it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, then, all right, let me ask you real quick. So if I talk to the client, he says, you know what, that's fine. I'll move it back. I'll connect it to the dock itself. I mean, do I come back to you guys with that? Would that cancel the argument then, or no?
Well, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, the guy next door has it, right? Down to the south, we're looking at that dock with a little platform. Yeah.
And
So
The float.
Does what you're applying for meet with our blue book?
it seems to, except for the algal bloom.
Well, that's my point, is that if it meets with the Blue Book and you're educating, your folks on the activity that they're talking about engaging, if it meets with the Blue Book, it meets with the Blue Book. I mean, what are
Yeah.
we doing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sean, does that put us at any risk if we give permission for a swim platform, full well knowingly the degree of impact that harmful algal blooms have on Mill Pond and have had since 2013?
I would suggest, again, you make the applicant aware, but they're taking that risk. They're engaging in
Correct.
it's different than if someone had drowned in a waterway where there's
Yeah.
not permitted. It's an assumption of risk. They are weighing the risk versus the reward. It doesn't necessarily create any kind of liability on this board.
Yep.
That's what I was thinking. And if it meets the Blue Book, then they should be able to apply and receive. Unless we
It would be
change
no
the law.
different than, it would be no different than them taking an aluminum boat out there and jumping in and going swimming.
Right. Exactly.
It's no different.
Yep.
So Matt, when you speak to them, if you would just either yourself take a look or have them take a look at New York State DEC HAB's page, and you can go back and look at the archives, and there's a lot of information on there.
Okay.
Just as far, and I'm happy to like talk you through any of that, just
Okay.
so that we all know as much
Yeah.
as we can about this as we move forward with this decision. Thanks,
Let
Matt.
them know we'll be giving a pop quiz at some point in time.
Lovely.
So
All right,
does it meet the Blue Book,
Who you asking
James?
me?
James?
I think it does. I mean, it's a swim flat. Well, like I said, the Blue Book regulations are a little inconsistent in that section. It does say that a swim platform 8x8 that's seasonal in nature is, fits the Blue Book. So
And I'll add, where there's ambiguity, it really should be held in favor of the applicant. So I think it is something permissible.
Okay, so Sean and James,
I'm in the middle
weighed
of it.
in.
I can't talk. I'm in the middle of the meeting.
I think if Sean and James have weighed in relative to its consistency with the Blue Book.
yeah, as of now, for the size and location, it does for the swim float. If you attached it to the catwalk itself, then I think that it would fall under the section that says that only fixed docks are allowed in freshwater ponds. So I don't think that would be very helpful.
But the application we're reviewing right now meets the guidelines.
And I think you guys should definitely take a look at the language and maybe change it around a little bit with Sean, so that there's not inconsistencies in that. But now it fits the Blue Book.
We can certainly all sit down and, when moving forward, make some revisions to this code section.
Sean, your recommendation on this application?
As it stands, I think it's, conforming to your Blue Book.
Yep. Okay.
That's your answer.
One quick question. If it was brought back to be a dock, it wouldn't have to be seasonally removed, right?
But we don't get.
I don't think you can permit it.
You can't.
If it was attached, because it
Right.
specifically it says only fixed docks will be allowed in freshwater ponds and lakes.
Right.
Then right underneath that, it says permitted swim floats shall not exceed 8x8 and are seasonal in nature. They must be removed from water.
If you would be making it a catwalk, ramp, and a float, which is illegal in a pond. Right now, you have a catwalk that you basically go to the pond, and then you have a separate swim platform offshore that, which is legal.
Right.
Mhm. Yes. And you didn't have seasonal aspect of in ponds because you didn't want all that disturbance of jetting piles in and out in the winter time.
I think
So
it
Matt-
sounds like we're good here.
Matt,
so.
if you talk,
I'll reach out to the client and educate this person,
okay,
just so they're aware. And if I email us information over to the client, I will provide you with a copy of that email for your file.
Okay. That's great.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
All right.
Matt.
I appreciate you guys. Have a great day.
We're gonna advance that, right?
I would
Yes.
say,
Is that advanced?
yeah, I think both our applications have advanced that are on work session, Lisa.
Correct.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that.
Okay. Well, I think it's time that we've done these permits, that we have a little discussion about MECOP before I talk to the supervisor again.
Eric, real quick, I was supposed to have Wind North Highway on.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that.
James?
I think that's on for the
For the regular meeting, Ed?
Oh, okay. All right.
Is it, James? I think that's,
I believe so. Let me just.
I'm pretty sure that's what I saw, Ed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on for the regular meeting because it's an emergency, so it needs to get
Okay.
resolution.
Okay.
I mean,
Sounds
if you
good.
guys want to discuss it now, or you can discuss it then, but it's up to you guys.
Well, we have time right now, if you want to discuss it now.
Yeah, it was brought to my attention, Terry Contracting is doing work down at the boathouses, Wind North. There's a section of bulkhead that was vinyl, not steel, in the canal. It's basically, but it has busted out. They put temporary steel sheathing outside of it to stop it from basically falling into the canal. They've got all the right, application. They got all the material. Everything is good to go. So I just like to be able to expedite this as quick as possible, because if it does let loose, you're going to have hundreds of yards of material falling in the canal and undermining a swimming pool. So it's a very dire situation.
Mm-hmm.
That should definitely advance to the general session.
Yeah.
So I just want to bring it to everybody's attention. I've been down there monitoring it. It's somewhat falling in now. So as we speak, it could be letting loose. So I want to make sure it doesn't happen.
Right.
And
But we have resolution on for that.
Yep. Okay. Very good.
I'm fine with it, Ed.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Good.
You're welcome.
So Ed, you wanted to discuss MECOX.
Yes. I sent you a really brief thought about going down there and sampling some of the oysters. I talked to Chris Goldberg today. He said a half a dozen oysters from the east end of the bay, a half a dozen oysters from the west end of the bay, put them on ice and bring them to his lab, and he will do an assessment of their, meat indices and see how healthy they are. So I'd like to move forward and maybe craft a resolution, hiring a bayman to go down there and, harvest the oysters so that we can get them over to Goldberg's lab ASAP.
Okay. No, I think that's important if to see what health they are.
So
absolutely.
Hey, Ed.
Yes, Billy.
I think it should have a bay constable with that person, whoever's going to get the oysters.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that because it's uncertified right now, so you need to contact the bay constable and have
They actually should physically be there, because you don't want people to see someone taking oysters and they're going to go do it because they saw it.
No. I would definitely ask one of the bay constables to be part of it. That way
And I have another question for you, Ed, too. What's going to happen in 2 years, in 3 years, when there's no spawn of steamers in there, and in 4 or 5 years when there's no spawn of oysters in there? Because of, if the oysters do live, and they're not going to, I know as well as you know that they're not going to spawn when the salinity is this low. Are the baymen going to get a job with the town, in the town for a Ubia or a taxi driver? What is the town going to do? What is the town board going to do to keep the baymen going?
I don't know, Billy, because that's a question, because that's why I want to make sure that we take the sample now, get it over to a lab, and then they can assess it moving forward. As you know, when the salinity gets extremely low, the shellfish get stressed and they don't spawn. There was a really nice set of oysters in there last year, so you really have about 5-year classes of oysters coming on. But with the low salinity, them not spawning, and the growth rate is going to be exponentially slowed up. So, and the next problem is if the salinity is below 5 for a prolonged period of time, when the water warms up, they might all die down there. So it could be a potential for, a multi-million-dollar fishery where millions of shellfish perish. And then basically you're going to have basically all of this nutrients being let loose into the pond, potential algae outbreak, and it's not going to be swimmable. You're not going to be able to go crabbing in there. There's bass and perch and eels, and so I mean the chain reaction could be catastrophic.
Yeah, it could be like Lake Agawam, and just like we were talking about before, it's gonna go right back to Mill Pond. And the guy won't be able to swim. The people, because they can't flush out Mill Pond into Mecox if it's full of water.
Right.
Well, and if we go to let the inlet out during the summertime, you're not going to be able to swim at Scott Cameron or Flying Point, the two town beaches, because all of the water coming out of Mecox could potentially be toxic. Fecal coliform and all these blue-green algae and other stuff that could potentially happen down there. So that's why it's critical that we get this permit to dredge. I mean, it should have been done last winter, or we applied 4 years ago. I don't understand what we need more paperwork and more paperwork.
Well,
this is what happens.
Some of that, but let me interrupt just for 1 minute. James, do you have a report on where the plovers are in relation to the cut today yet?
They're down there now, or they're on their way down there now. So I should have it shortly.
Yes, sea levels in there. Can you look that up today?
What's that?
Can you look up the salinity levels right now?
Yeah, hang on 1 second. I'll pull it up.
The salinity levels are just under 8. 7.19 at Flying Point Road, 7.92 at Crescent Avenue, and 7.9 at the Mid Bay Station.
There you go.
And the water temperature.
And what do you think it's going to be after the rainstorm tomorrow? It's going to be less than that.
This is very frustrating. This board, obviously, we declared a state of emergency for this. And one of the primary responsibilities that I feel that I have as a trustee, and I'm sure you may all feel the same, is sustainable shellfish harvesting abilities. And this runs counter to what we've been doing. We've made these investments partnering up with Stony Brook, Southampton, and Cornell Cooperative on these sanctuaries in the Bay. And the evidence is, landings up, according to Dr. Goldberg, 1,000%, right? So we made these investments in the Bay. We increased water quality, increased shellfish harvest and sustainability. But the frustrating part is that what's happening in Mecox, which is a very important watershed to the Bayman, and as we all know how it affects the agriculture and everybody around there, it's not being handled in that same proactive fashion by all the regulatory authorities that need to kind of work with us. And I understand the birds and the threatened and endangered species, and that's important too. But in my view, there's a way we can do both. We can take care of those threatened and endangered birds and make sure that they actually end up better at the end of the day with more habitat to forage. And we can take the actions necessary to promote a sustainable shellfish harvest in Mecox Bay if everyone will just work together with us, okay? Just cooperate with us, collaborate with us, come to the table. I mean, more paperwork that we have, and I don't have a problem doing more paperwork. I got piles of it all over the place here. But we have to be able to get people to do this in a timely fashion before, like Trustee Pell says, it's all going to go bad. And you're not going to see, just like we see the dividends that get paid off by making sanctuaries and working on water quality and other projects, you're going to see the repercussions 3, 4, and 5 years down the road for the inactivity that's occurring today by the stress that you're putting on that class of shellfish and that entire ecosystem. And it's perplexing to me. This seems to be, at this stage of the game, a common sense, proactive activity that is important to protect public health, safety, water quality, and the environment. Why
Mhm.
is it such a struggle at this point in time? Can anybody?
Because government is paralyzed. No one will make a decision. We're the only ones that are sticking our neck out and making decisions, obviously on 65 Cliff, obviously on this. Everybody is worried that they're going to say the wrong thing or make a wrong decision, going to be criticized. It's an absolute paralyzation of all forms. No one will give a hard estimate. Let me describe a conversation I had with the regional supervisor for Fish and Wildlife. And they said, well, since Army Corps had not forwarded an application to them, that they couldn't make a recommendation on where the plovers were, and as far as given an emergency permit to open the cut. And this was Friday. So he says, look, I know what I'm talking about. I've been around 30 years. I know all this. And he's talking about different pockets of the bait that come in and the plovers move around. And I said to him, I said, well, why don't we come up with some sort of, game plan so that when Army Corps asks a question, we're going to supply them with the information of what you need to know. We're going to get it, and then we can give it right to Army Corps, and we'll cut out a couple of days of conversations back and forth. So, which he was reluctant to do. And I said, I couldn't understand the fact that there are plovers running around right in the middle of the beach where the town beach is, but we can't bring a piece of machinery up and just put basically a silt fence to stop them from running. I mean, this big piece of machinery, we're going to have a plover monitor there right in front of the thing. And he said, well, that would disturb them. They're more used to people than the machine and all this business. And I said, well, what is the length that you have to have away from the machine in order for us to maybe have a trigger point? You know, instead of putting in reports every day, we have a trigger point. He says, well, I don't know. And I said, but you just said you have 30 years of experience in this field. I said, and you're telling me now that you can't come up with some ballpark figure that we can agree on right now. Well, I'd be reluctant to do that and everything. I said, man, come on, 30 years. You just told me. He says, okay, 300 meters. So it's basically just off the top of their head, you know, not even looking at the site, not being down there and making decisions. And I said, we're on the front line. I said, nobody knows your name. Nobody knows your address or your phone number or anything like that. I said, we have to take all the heat for you. I said, so, maybe I should, when the bay dies, we can use your name of why it happened. Well, I don't like to see that, but I just make a decision. So that's what we're going to go with right now after we get off this conversation today. And I'll make my next round of calls to everyone and see where we are at the town attorney's office. James and I went on a tour of Mecox Bay on Friday. Was it Friday or Thursday, James? I think it was Thursday. We went with the town supervisor to look at the situation. The water's up to the road. It's cutting away town pavement. It's impacting cesspools. And as of this time, I still don't have a state of emergency address from the supervisor, which would help us tremendously to show a unified effort from the town board and the trustees that something has to be done. I have not received anything from the town board and any comments or anything. And I just find it perplexing that if 4 or 5 inches of snow fall on a road, then it's an emergency. But the death of one of the best bays, the jewel in the trustee's crown, is left to die. It's not an emergency. So maybe I'll find out.
Is there a misunderstanding of the repercussions of the inactivity? Is there? I mean, I
don't believe so. We made it very clear. I mean, James was there. He stated his case. We went around to a bunch of different sites to see what the water levels were. We explained the salinity and all those situations, and the fact that the basements were being flooded, and who knows what people store down in their basements, and that enters in, that gets dissolved. Maybe some pesticides, ant killer, herbicides. That gets
it's further troubling in that the sand travels from east to west, and there's a a need to get that excess sand that's in that bay into the littoral system so that it helps with erosion and helps make our beaches in our town better and wider and provides better protection to people's homes in the dune system. It's important to get that sand out of the trapped area that's creating this built up delta that doesn't allow us to get a good flush back into the system.
Right.
So there are many aspects of benefits that we will achieve as a community, as a township, for our environment and our citizens. And I just, to be in such a paralysis by analysis to create dysfunctional government that is actually going to have repercussions that you may not see for years to come, as Trustee Pell pointed out.
Hey, Scott.
Yes, sir.
I hate to interrupt, but also, if I understood right, two things I want to bring up. One is home rule is very important. And the people up west who are making the decision for us don't even come out here. So they have to, we have more experience than they have. Number two is I understood that you had a lengthy conversation with Councilman Rick Martell, who was our representative of us, about me, Cox, and get behind us on this. And he's going to bring it back to the town board for their support. And I just can't understand if they decide not to back us, where you got Councilman Bouvier, who's wants oyster hatcheries and clam hatcheries. He's big. That's what he did for his life. He's going to sit back and let this die. And then you have Julie Lofstead, whose family for centuries made money off the seafood industry. She should be right up there and with a flag and leading the charge. And same thing with Tommy Scavone, I can't, he lives down by Harbor in a pond down by there. I can't understand why they're not right here with us right now. Maybe after Rick brings it to them, they'll change their mind. I hope it's not too late.
Well,
yeah,
I hear you loud and clear. I mean,
this is the probably easiest decision that any board could make.
Yes.
I don't understand. I don't understand. Is it, and that's why I asked the question. Is there a misunderstanding about the repercussions? Because this has been going on for centuries, and the trustees have been managing this, and there's been several cycles of permits issued. This is not like, day 4 of the pandemic when we have no idea what's going on right now. This is something that we've been managing. So what's the holdup? What's the problem? More paperwork we have, fine, we'll get you more paperwork. Red tape, you're never going to get government out of the red tape. Let's provide them what they need as efficiently as possible and answer whatever questions they may have. But, they did come out and meet with Mr. Halsey out at the farm, and they saw the issues that were the agricultural community was facing based on the watershed being so backed up and the reactionary versus pro-action. That was like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Everybody was invited to come out, as like you said, they're from the West and they don't come out. But where have we gone from there? It's really unfortunate. And the trustees had the foresight to partner up with Stony Brook, Southampton, and with, Cornell Cooperative and Peconic Estuary and all these folks to do really good things for the environment that statistically are paying dividends. And this is counter to all of that. This makes no sense at all to me. And why we can't stand shoulder to shoulder with everybody else, all the elected officials that have a stake in our community, why we can't all get around the table. We were at Peconic Land Trust. Trustee Warner, you were there with me?
Yes,
right?
I was.
And everybody said we were going to work together and we were going to get this done. There was an understanding. You had Army Corps and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Everybody was on that meeting. And I don't understand.
4 years ago, Scott?
That was over 3 years ago.
Wow.
And everybody said that it was all going to happen. And everybody understood what they had to do. And we worked hard past that MECOX management plan. We went through at least 3 sets of public hearing, taking all the concerns of all the stakeholders into what was in our jurisdiction. Yeah, we had to change it a little bit because we don't regulate septic systems. They should be replaced. They should be the best. we can recommend, but that's not in our jurisdiction. What is opening that cut and getting it to flush. It's kind of like keeping a patient alive in the ambulance, getting them to the hospital so that those doctors can do whatever it is that they need, put a stent, open heart surgery, whatever it is. They have to arrive at the hospital alive. We're in the ambulance right now. With this, Mecox is in the ambulance. We're trying to save it so that all these upland decisions can help over the long term, make it a really great watershed. But if it all dies and goes bad, we've got a big problem.
Well, the
defeating the
problem I have, we've been managing it for 370 years plus. There hasn't been a problem until the DEC came around and started, trying to administer emergency permits to open it, which makes the process even worse, Scott.
That's because they're creating the emergency. When you switch from being proactive is management, okay?
I
You're
know.
taking the necessary steps to trigger so you don't have the emergency. But when you eliminate that ability, you're now creating the emergency. They're asking for a demonstration of threats to public health and safety before the allowance is given to take the action. That's like saying, send us examples of car accidents on the highway before we send plows out in a snowstorm. That makes no sense at all, okay? We know what trigger points we have to open that cut at, all right?
Yes, we do.
We know exactly what's going on. We're watching salinity. We're watching those levels. Ann just gave us a report on the levels. We're looking at the weather. We see that there's more rain on the horizon and that all that runoff from the roadways and the land are going to feed into that watershed and capitulate this problem even worse. So what are we doing? And I understand the birds. I know all about the birds. And there has to be a way we can get people to the moon and back. There's a way that we can save Mecox Bay and we can have a very successful piping plover least term threatened and endangered species program. I'm convinced. And you know what? One more thing. If you on the subject of the birds, I'm worried, very worried that if you inconvenience people enough, they're going to make sure that we're not successful. And that's a bad thing. Okay. So I think balance and I think being reasonable is important. And I'm really hoping everybody can get around the table and we can solve this problem because it's really not that tough a problem. Okay.
Well,
we should be able to do this.
Hey,
Eric,
Scott.
getting back to your 1,000-foot, sorry, Billy.
Let's go
Getting
ahead.
back to your 1,000-foot buffer and plovers. What is it with helicopters and the helicopter pad at Southampton that they can land and take these helicopters every 10 minutes for hours on end, and it doesn't affect the birds nesting? I mean, you have our beach, which is the picnic area, and the county where there's no vehicles on there whatsoever. But you have helicopters coming and going all day and right into the evening. We need permits, or they need permits for fireworks, which is loud and obnoxious, just like a helicopter. But we have helicopters. They've kind of forgotten about this whole, process there. I'm out there on the water every day, and I listen to these helicopters from 6:30 in the morning until late at night, flying in and out of there.
Well, what was interesting last year is I believe and James can back me up, there was plovers near the helipad, right? Remember that controversy?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
they were in the parking lot.
And they were saying, well, we're going to have to shut the parking lot down. And I said, well, you better call the FAA and shut the helicopters down then too. And then all of a sudden it went away.
Yeah, I asked Fish and Wildlife for a response to the helicopter situation down there, and still waiting for a response because Fish and Wildlife have to talk to the FFA and see what their regulations are for that stuff. So
maybe a
I
few.
still haven't received anything for it, but
maybe a few influential people called up and that got squashed. They need their helicopters coming in.
Just to circle back around to Mecox, for the benefit of the public, could we just describe the proposed project and the scope of work that's been requested?
Yeah, Eric?
Well, originally, Originally, this inlet's been open for 375 years. It's been there's pictures in the 30s, 40s, 50s of it, huge, wide opening. It's been opened several times with a dredge because the flats accumulate in the back and don't allow good interchange. And then it was dredged. There was 2 previous DEC permits that were issued because we felt that to protect the contractors who were threatened with seizure of equipment if we didn't have a DEC permit. But that's besides the point. We got two separate 10-year permits for a almost 1,000-foot long channel through the flats in order to build up a head of water so that when we did open up the front, that it would flow through and create interchange, create a workable inlet to get salt water into the back. Over the course of the years, it's been we reapplied for a 10-year permit in 2015 for the same thing, basically renewal of the past 20 years of activity. And through the sequence of events with this Mecox management plan and other lawsuits and that were involved in other ways, that somehow the plan got down to 10-foot wide through the flats, which officials at the DEC now concede that 10-foot is woefully inadequate and would never work. So faced with the fact that they were still stalling after the 3-month period, the public hearings ended in January, and they had still not issued a permit after 5 years of review, that they couldn't figure that out yet. That we revised the permit and said, well, look, if this 10 years, after discussions with high-level people in the DEC, if 10-foot's not going to work, there's no sense getting a permit for 10-foot and then modifying it again, because they couldn't tell us when they were going to issue the permit in the first place, just this vague, well, after the plover season. There was no set time limit. So we modified the permit back to the original permit application of 390 plus or minus feet in the front, 10-foot wide, and then the 200-foot wide channel in the back to get enough water head in. But now the problem is we are in the plover season, and the DEC has still not responded as far as the new 200-foot cut, other than to constantly request more information. And then when anybody from the media calls them up, say that they're getting mixed messages from the trustees to make us look bad.
So to be clear, what's been applied for is, thank you for that explanation, especially the historical aspect of it. So to what's been applied for is a 390-foot long cut across the berm that would be 10 feet wide, and that would take about 1 day of work.
Right.
And then approximately 5 to 10 days of draining
right
the flats with that cut open in the front. And
right.
Then after the flats have drained and it's hard enough for the equipment to move back into the sandy portion in the back, that flood delta, there would be probably another 5 to 7 days of a work window with an excavator and a bulldozer, or just an excavator?
Well, as it stands right now, the 200-foot wide cut is for the 10-year permit. What we asked for was an emergency situation to go in there with a machine. We felt that a 75-foot cut would be somewhat adequate in an emergency situation, and to have the machine go in and side cast, no other vehicles on the beach, just pick up dig a trench and side cast it over to the side. And that's what's before the DEC right now is an emergency situation. So they haven't agreed on that.
So it's 2 different cuts and a longer one across the flats in the back, so that we could have a good channel that will drain the bay and have effective tidal exchange.
Yes, hopefully.
Which has not been done since 20 2014, 2013.
Probably, yeah, right in that vicinity. And you know what has to be, what they still don't understand is that this does not have to be done every year. It's good if you have a 200-foot channel, it's good for sometimes 7, 8, 9 years. You know, it's not every year. And when I brought up to Fish and Wildlife, I said, you know, you have almost probably 6 or 7 acres of flats that are underwater now, which have been traditionally the best foraging areas for plovers. You're denying them foraging areas by not having us go back in there and drain that flat. And that was, well, the big mantra the other day was our hands are tied, our hands are tied. That's what they're telling us.
So then again, for the edification of the public, a declaration of state of emergency, has it ever been requested by the trustees of the town board previously? And when is it typically issued by the town board?
No, it's never been asked for by the trustees, but it would help me and Trustee Horowitz when we're talking to, it's mostly symbolic. It's not saying that we're going, that by the town giving us an emergency declaration that we're going to open the cut, going rogue. It's just saying that there's an emergency situation that everybody should be aware of. And that's the most concerning part about it all, is that the town board, who always wants to work with the trustees and champions of the environment and everything like that, are not recognizing that this is an environmental catastrophe in the making.
It's much greater than symbolic. It's an actual representation of what is occurring and what will occur. As I stated before, you make investments in the bay, you get dividends. If you have inactivity in areas that are crucial, you end up with unintended consequences and repercussions that you may not see the effects of for years to come.
Right.
It is an emergency. And I know that the other regulatory authorities that have to get involved with making decisions on us, and when I say us, I mean us as a township or a community and the environment, it will help if the town trustees and the town board are standing shoulder to shoulder in the best interest of public health, safety, and the environment. Okay? We should be shoulder to shoulder. There should be no mixed messaging coming from these two boards, in my opinion, at this point in time relative to where we're at. It's not anything that's brand new. This has been going on for years and years and years. Okay?
Yeah.
It's very clear. Low salinity, low oxygen, harmful algal blooms, people's basements flooded, people's septic systems flooded, and all of that entering into our watershed is not a good thing. And we want to see a sustainable shellfish harvest. This is not how you get one. This is how you destroy one. Okay?
Yeah, and the Community Preservation Fund is putting money into this bay by establishing all these monitoring buoys to help us, manage it better. And it's decaying in front of their eyes. I mean, so where's their investment? Their investment is,
either you're going to watch the monitoring buoys and you're going to take the necessary actions so that you can, pay attention to that, or you're just going to ride it right on down.
Or is it just lip service, window dressing?
You have a big target on the radar. It's a big target, and we're on a collision course. You have to make some variations in that course so you don't collide. And right now, we're set for a collision. Okay, it's not a good scenario.
Time for the supervisor and the town board to put their big boy pants on and make a damn decision. Sorry for the expletive.
Well, I just think that it would be good if we work together to be successful. That's what I think the public expects from us all. And a lot of what gets affected is outside of the trustees' jurisdiction. It's outside of we are regulating agriculture. All right. And I know those folks are suffering. Okay. And it's not right. And there's millions and millions of dollars of tax revenue that is generated from all of these folks that live around this bay. And we kind of owe it to them to do the best that we can to not have a public safety a public health issue, and this is avoidable.
Right.
Hey,
So,
Eric,
And also the environmental division, where are they? Where are they on this? I mean, everybody that saving a vital wetland or declaring everything as wetland species and watching a bay, without saying a peep.
yeah, Cliff Drive. Hey, Eric,
Yes.
maybe we could have Sean invite Supervisor Jay Snyderman this afternoon to come and speak about this with Jim, because this could have a lot of legal, legal coming down the road, where besides all the shellfish dying, all the people's homes who live around it can't go swim in, can't use the bay, and the price of their property go down in their investment.
Mhm.
And they're gonna blame us for it and end up suing us, and there goes the town,
Yeah, well, we're taking the blame for everything.
Yeah, we're taking the blame. So they might want to chime in on this, on this.
We're fully prepared. I mean, we have people lined up to open this at a moment's notice. The fact of the matter is, though, is that, we can't be left out there swinging. We need to know that the town is going to back us up as far as, if a legal action is taken against us, even though we have an act of 1907 that says we can open up a cut when we want. It has never been tested in court, and that costs money. And the trustees' budget is not that big, and we need the backing of the town.
so
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So to circle back around, when historically has a state of emergency, in what circumstances has a state of emergency or a declaration of emergency been undertaken by the town?
Snowstorms,
No storms,
severe storms.
like that. There's no
Hurricanes,
set rules.
Sandy, Irene.
So it's on a town-wide basis usually.
No.
So this would be,
No, it doesn't have to be.
Certainly within I think it's certainly within the board's authority and purview to make such a declaration. We could have a conversation in terms of where we're going. Everybody has the ability to enjoy Mecox Bay, and commercial fishing in our community is part of our heritage, and sustainable shellfish harvest we want to preserve. Agricultural community in the town of Southampton, it's important to us, and this has an effect on that. And it's just odd how we make these investments in all this shellfish seeding, and we partner up with everybody, and we get dividends for our citizens. But now this is working counterintuitive to that. Now inactivity is going to kill shellfish beds that filter water, and we're going to put more pressure on our commercial fishing industry and our agricultural community. This doesn't make any sense. Okay. It doesn't make any sense at all. Not common sense. What's driving this? Can anybody explain what's really driving this?
And Scott, also all the freeholders who like to go down there and go ice boarding, go get a handful of oysters in the wintertime. There are people who like to go kayaking and stand up boarding there and sailing, water skiing. They won't be able to go there.
Look at Lake Agawam. Look at all the effort that everybody has come around the table. Everybody, including the state, has come around the table. The citizens, volunteers, the board of trustees, the state of New York, everybody, to make Lake Agawam not be a public health issue, but to be a beautiful watershed, right? Everybody's working hard. Well, why can't we take some of that energy over to Mecox Bay and get the same type of collaboration and cooperation from everybody that we're doing at Agawam to save Mecox Bay and do what we have to do over there. The trustees have one of the best, if not the best run threatened and endangered species programs that there is, bar none. Okay. I think this board has demonstrated that it has the ability to manage the birds and take care of the birds, but we can also walk and chew gum at the same time. We can take care of those birds in this area and we can save this bay. Please, let's all get around the table. Let's find solutions to problems and let's get this thing done proactively. Let's not make this even worse and than it has to be.
So
we just
Scott,
that consistency, you know, the governor is proposing a $20 million pipeline to refresh the waters of Western Shinnecock. They're putting clams out in Shinnecock Bay all over the place. And his own agency is letting a bay die.
Well, to that point, I don't think it was 20 million. I think it was like 80 or 100 million.
Oh, okay.
And in some of those projects that I looked at, the carrying costs were like $1 million a year. So to that point, take a look at what the budget is to manage Mecox Bay, a major watershed that has to be done. It's a fraction of that. And yes. it's a major league, a heavy lift on everything, of nothing but encumbrances, of not people working together. It's like the creation of more red tape and ambiguity, which creates dysfunctional government, which has a lot of people not happy. And quite frankly, this is unnecessary. We can work together with everybody and be successful here very easily. I don't understand. After all the years and the meetings and the discussions, driving up to Stony Brook, Conic Land Trust, going to Mr. Halsey's farm with everybody and touring around, I don't understand, you know, aside from, well, I got to get this form and I need that form and I want a drawing of this and a drawing. I cannot understand why everybody couldn't get around the table and solve this problem in all these years. There's something else driving this. There's some other issue here.
No, nobody wants to make a decision. It's rampant throughout government these days.
Look, pandemic put a lot of delay and made a lot of problems for a lot of people. You can't deny it. But some of us have used that time to be productive when we were at our homes on our laptops or wherever we were. The world still got to turn. You still have these problems that need to be solved. I don't understand what's driving this.
So to that point, and Scott, I certainly agree with you that we would hope that everyone would work together and collaborate for the benefit of the health of Mecox. But if there is not a state of emergency issued, which has never been done before, has it been asked of the higher level DEC officials and the other elected officials, what is holding this up? When will this permit be issued? What happens when that's asked of them?
They say we don't know. Look, this fits a common theme with the DEC. I sat at a meeting about 10 years ago with all high-level people from all over New York State, DEC, Fish and Wildlife, DOS. It must have been about 30 people in the room. And the supervisor from Riverhead Town asked the DEC point blank, look, I've had to do fish studies for the last 4 years in Wading River Creek. How many more years do you need of fish studies so I can finally, get this creek dug? And they said, well, just keep on doing it a few more years. And that's the common theme. Look, you had an obvious violation. Had a conversation with the DEC attorney 2 weeks ago with Scott. And he was asked point blank on Cliff Drive, do you need a permit in order to remove a bulkhead? Do you need a permit from the DEC? And he said, yes. I said, then why didn't you issue a violation? Oh, well, we were waiting to see what you guys were going to do. Okay. That would have helped us tremendously in bringing it to the table faster. It's just no one wants to make a decision. Why did they, after 5 or 6 years of looking at this thing and reviewing it and meetings with Ed and Scott, constant meetings, even after receiving all the comments from the public hearings back in January, have they still not even up till when we did the modification, issue a permit? I mean, you would think by that time they'd have enough information with all these meetings, or even go down there and take a look at it themselves and be able to render some sort of decisions. Absolutely, it's ridiculous.
You know, I was just thinking, you know, Eddie and I would go up to Stony Brook and we'd have these meetings and you talk about, you know, not wanting to make decisions. Almost every meeting, if not every meeting, they had a fire drill. Somebody pulled that fire alarm and we spent 20 minutes in the parking lot of our meeting. We were in the parking lot.
That's
you can't
pretty
make this stuff,
dysfunctional.
right?
Yes.
You can't make this stuff up. So we leave our, whatever we do, we drive all the way to Stony Brook, meet with a bunch of people, collaborate, fix the problem. And we're in the parking
Fire
lot
drill.
because of fire drill. Not once, like every time.
This is a recurring theme. If you talk to any public official in any other town, they will all say the same thing. They just drag it out and drag it out and drag it. I talked to the regional director the other day and asked her point blank. I said, can you give us some idea of when they're going to make a decision? She says, I have no idea.
But you know what? From the simplest thing, just to take this right back to somebody, maybe it was Trustee Pelley said like homeschool or home rule.
Home rule.
We're the trustees of the town of Southampton. You know, people are all out here. You got more people here than you've seen because of the conditions that have occurred. Okay. They're here for these waterways and the beaches, and these are all in the wheelhouse of the trustees. We're the stewards of these things. And it's perplexing to me that with, you know, these things being the economic engine to our community, why we're sending still mixed messages. Why are the trustees and the town board not standing shoulder to shoulder, making similar declarations of an emergency and trying to act proactively to avoid unintended consequences that may not rear their ugly head for years? But we know all about it. Water quality. You know, you would never think that people were going to be sitting at their dining room tables having discussions about septic systems and harmful algal blooms. Would you have thought about that 20 years ago? No, but that's what they do. That's what they do. There's very few people in this community that don't understand about septic systems and their impacts to our water quality in our bays. All right. We're in a new place now. We all know. So what are we going to do about it? Okay. Again, the bay is in the ambulance. We want to get it to the hospital, save the patient. Okay. Then we can fix all this other stuff. Why are there roadblocks and toll booths and they took the tires off the ambulance? Why? Why is this? Okay. This is not that tough. And even the people out on the ocean understand we need to get that sand out of that delta and back out on that beach to protect their homes, build our nice beaches, and get it back into the system. That's how it works. Okay. Need permits to do that, right? So why are we holding it up and inconveniencing everybody?
Yeah.
It's no answer.
Well, nobody wants to be creative either. They don't want to go beyond just looking at the regulations. They don't want to think outside the box a little bit. How are we going to save this bay? That should be the overriding thing. It's the Department of Environmental Conservation. I mean,
well, you know, look, the last two openings were unsuccessful in my view. It is not getting the proper flushing because of the level of sand material and the configuration. It is not successful. You had all these experts giving you all types of opinions, and the reality is it's not gonna, unless we take these actions, it is not going to work. It is going to be under stress. This is not acceptable. Let's work together. Let's get this done. Let's send the message to these folks. We need to come to the table. We need to be proactive. We need to fix the problem finally. You have to make a decision. Okay. If there's a major objection, let's work it out. Let's get past it. Let's not just sit here and let it all go bad. That's not how it works. That's how it doesn't work. That's the creation of dysfunctional government. No good. Please, let's work it out.
So coming back to the critical situation that now exists with Mecox and the fact that we are proposing work within the endangered species season and that there are I'm not as current as I might be on the location of the plovers or the nest and the brood situation, but there are plovers within this work area right now. And
220 meters.
Hey, Ann?
and looking,
Ann,
just let
if
me,
I-
let me
ahead.
finish, please. Just let me finish. And looking at the fact that we've applied for a scope of work that is in the range of 2 to 2.5 weeks in the height of summer season. There is the possibility that this may not be approved. What's our plan B?
Hey, Ann, so you've been down there for a couple of years and taking care of that, and you've been watching the plovers, and you've been,
So Bill,
let me finish talking, Ann, let me finish talking.
I
I
just
waited for
asked
you,
a question.
Ann?
Oh, wait, hold on a minute, hold on. She asked a question. Let me answer that, and then Bill, you start, okay? Okay? First of all, what's plan B? We have to discuss that in executive session. Now, Bill.
So Ann, you've been down there for the last couple of years, you've been managing it, you've been trying to get the permits for the DC for the last 3 or 4 years, okay? Trying, they've been stalling you. What do you recommend for us to do now? We have a big problem down there. What would you think to cure the problem down there? Should we open it, or we should sit back and wait for a permit? What do you think?
So Trustee Pell, that's exactly my question of the board. I've been managing this. I took over this location from Trustee Stafford in January of 2020. I have been learning during COVID, which has been extremely difficult, and we were successful in obtaining many emergency authorizations. We applied in mid-February for the dig that would be the 1,400-foot channel. It was approved in mid-March. However, when it was approved, the scope of work and the work window did not meet up. It was approved on March 19th with a condition that all work be completed by March 31st, which was the beginning of endangered species season. At that point, might it have been prudent to have requested an extension to the emergency authorization? Perhaps, but unfortunately, the permit that was applied for was for a 1,400-foot channel that was 10 feet wide. It was determined that that would not be something that would make a successful opening. So therefore, we are now in this position. We have opened twice since the beginning of endangered species season. As Scott just noted, both of those conditions were only for the front channel, the 390 feet. What's now been applied for is a full 390 feet in the front and 1,000 feet in the back. However, the conditions of that permit at this time are very difficult. So that's what I'm saying is, if it's not approved, do we try and open again the front channel and at least get it down and wait until those birds are out of there? And then as soon as we can, do that long dig.
No,
I don't know. I know.
In my discussions with Fish and Wildlife, the problem is the front channel. Because that's where the birds are. They're not in the flats because they're underwater. It's only the front channel. And they were 220 meters away on Friday.
Right. James, have you had an update today or yesterday?
Not yet.
Right.
They're going down there and measuring it now. And that's why I suggested to Fish and Wildlife that if 300 meters was their criteria, that we put that in as rather than if there was, because it's only going to take probably 4 or 5 hours to do that, because there is water behind. It's only built up right at the front. So if they went down, if there was a trigger point And our monitors went down there in the morning and said, okay, it's 300. We could get a permit conditioned on that. So that they could go down there with Chesterfield on a moment's notice, boom, open it up, and then they'd be out of there for 5 or 6 days while the flat's drained. And then we could maybe put a berm up or something, or side cast it in a way that the plovers wouldn't go back there, so they could afford us the work. But that's the problem right now, not the flats, not the 1,000-foot channels, the front channel.
Plan B, Ann? I mean, I think what would be helpful is, as I have stated, this is affecting our entire community. It's affecting things outside of the trustee's jurisdiction. We agree this is emergency. I think that the town board needs to stand shoulder to shoulder with us. And we need to collectively, all of us, send a message to the state, to everybody, every regulatory authority that's got a stake here, that this cannot be backburnered anymore. It's showtime. We need you to provide us with decisions, okay? Or state what it is, the major objection here, because you cannot let it all go bad and die at this point in time. And I think as a township, we should be working together, and we should be standing shoulder to shoulder to try and be successful in what makes sense here.
Mm-hmm.
That would be helpful. I'm not, are we there? We're not there. We're not there, are we?
Scott, what everybody has to realize too is that we're not talking about a one-day event. If we start today, it's not going to have any flushing for at least 2 weeks.
On the subject of that a huge thing getting dug prior to bird season, they gave us a little leeway, very little leeway beyond that date, very little, and we're very clear about, okay, look, we see how this goes. It may end up going over, but we're only going to let you go over by this amount. And there was no way, because the contractor couldn't effectively do any of that work without that bay getting drained. And there was just no way that was going to work. Okay, so applying for an extension, we were already told right out of the gate, you're only going past this day, and it wasn't going to work. Mm-hmm. Really, we need to work together. We need help. All right. I know that the town board cares about the environment. I know they care about public safety, health of our citizens, understand the level of taxes, revenue that are generated, the economic engine to our community. We need to, all 10 elected officials, have a collaborative conversation again with a representation that we need the DEC to come to the table and help us solve this problem. Look at Agawam. It's going great. All kinds of stuff going on there. But you have everybody working together. I don't see that here. I see people have come out here, they've looked, they went back, they said, we're going to take care of this. And then there's been a lot of inactivity and a continued protocol of using emergency authorizations that do not work. They're not to anybody's advantage. They put more pressure on the environment. They're creating the problem. It has to stop. Mm-hmm. Where do you draw that line? I think the first step, 10 elected officials, shoulder to shoulder, solve the problem. 10, not 5, mm-hmm. 10.
Right.
That's my opinion. I'll work with anybody. This is what our responsibility is. We're the stewards of this. We've made investments. Those investments have paid off very well. This inactivity is going to have consequences that you may not see rear their ugly head for years to come. And it's going to hurt a lot of people. It's not how you look out for generations. That's not being concerned with legacy. That's not being proactive. This is dysfunctional. It's wrong. It needs to stop. And it needs to stop now. So let's do what we got to do.
Yeah. So if that's about it right now, let me close the meeting and then we can discuss it a little bit further when more facts come in. I have a couple of calls I have to make to see what the progress, we had the weekend, so nobody was, doing anything.
Trustee Pell had a suggestion about perhaps maybe somebody wants to join us in general session.
Oh, yeah, okay.
No, Bill?
I'll extend the invitation.
Yes.
That'd be
Okay.
wonderful, Eric.
Maybe Sean can get a hold of him and set that up.
I can certainly reach out. The supervisor does have a lot scheduled though, so I'm not sure he'll be available on about an hour's notice, but I'll certainly reach out and communicate that invitation to him.
John, would you like to?
Could have a statement to you. You know,
I know, Sean, I know you got connections. You can get them in there.
Sean, we need all hands on deck. You know, we see a situation that's going to be getting worse, especially with more rain on the horizon, putting more pressure on this watershed. And I think we'd be best suited to have all hands on deck moving forward here. And that includes the town.
It's kind of ironic that we've been part in the largest shellfish project with the college in Cornell and the governor reestablishing all the shellfish in Western Shinnecock Bay. And someone's going to allow all the shellfish and meacox, which is probably 100 times what we put any place else in the town, to all die. It's unfathomable.
Yeah, I know.
It really is. I'm sorry.
Not acceptable.
No.
Nope.
All right. So we're going to reconvene at 1 o'clock.
Yes, maybe I'll have some more answers by that time.
Okay.
Okay.
To update the board, everything has been submitted to the DEC for emergency authorization request. They are awaiting a plover update, which we should have shortly, which will be submitted to them. Hopefully the plovers are not in the way, which was the case on Friday.
All right.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay, make a motion that we close the work session and reconvene at 1 o'clock for the regular session.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
So carried. Okay.